was at work daily, trying to do my job, and I was actually victim of bullying and harassment, and it eventually led to me having a nervous breakdown.
He was devastated by the experience. His self-esteem plummeted to the point where he found it extremely hard to do anything in case what he did was substandard and was criticised.
All the bullying I experienced was from coworkers. A group of main nucleus of about 5 or 6 people. Obviously, there was one main protagonist that was the instigator behind all this, and I found like the dynamics were very similar to what I witnessed as a child in playground bullying.
I think it's probably true that most people who bully have been bullied at some stage in their life, and I think at least part of it is getting their own back. It's exerting power over somebody else. I don't really know at the end of the day they get any real satisfaction out of it. I think they simply don't think, in most cases, about the consequences of their actions.
At first you kind of take it on the chin. Oh, it's a bit of jesting, a bit of joking. You just try and man up, so to speak, and just take it all in jest. But when it becomes repeated and you feel threatened to the point where your job's on the line and your family are going to suffer, that's the point where it becomes very stressful.
You don't have to look very far within the workplace to see the evidence of bullying carrying on. And I know that the boardroom in companies is a very macho type of place. And I know people who are directors and who can quote examples of extreme bullying within that environment. And so it passes on down the chain.
I just wanted to go to work and do my job and not feel like I was constantly under pressure, being watched and ridiculed. Their behavior undermined my self-confidence and my ability to perform, and it made me anxious and very, very nervous about everything I was doing because of the repercussions that would come from anything that I did. I highlighted the issue to management, to the foreman, and he said to me, his exact words is, well, you'll have to deal with it.
I think one of the real difficulties is how mental health is slightly more difficult to diagnose. So I have a rugby injury and I go for an x-ray and I can see that there's some retropatellar damage. There's a set way of how to fix it. Whereas you don't go in and have a brain x-ray and come out and say that you're suffering with depression or some anxiety or a certain type of disorder.
Yeah, well, listen, just because people aren't wearing bandages or plasters doesn't mean they haven't got a genuine illness that requires understanding and appropriate support and treatment.
A lot of people wouldn't know how to spot the signs and symptoms of mental health because it can come across in so many ways, even a person, just not pulling their weight, just real basic things, but it's being able to look beyond that and just notice the signs and symptoms that there's more to this, that person's struggling.
I didn't understand what was going on with my depression. I didn't understand it was depression. To me, it was just another day and I was down. It wasn't until I actually got to that point, I lost everything, where I realized I had a problem.
It is common to not recognise that you've got a problem until someone points out certain things that you're doing that are self-destructive or show that you're not healthy. But then lots of people are aware there is a problem and maybe just don't know where to go for help.
It's a taboo subject. People just don't like talking about mental health. I don't think that it gets the recognition it needs. And we take it back. 1 in 4 people at some point will suffer, and in any one year it's 1 in 6 working age adults will actually suffer with symptoms associated with mental ill health. So it's, is so prevalent that people need to start doing something about it to make things better.
I actually was irritable at home. I was taking out on my kids. I was taking out on my wife. I was aggressive to them, and at that point, because I saw what I'd become, and I was taking it out on the people I loved the most, I just couldn't deal with it.
I think it relates to the traditional male role in society, where you're supposed to be strong, you're supposed to be the leader, you're supposed to be able to cope with everything that comes up. And when you fall short of that, then you fall short of your prescribed role in society, and that adds to the lack of self-confidence, because they feel they can't go anywhere because of loss of face again. The ultimate way out is to take your own life, and it's always been common amongst young men for those reasons, almost tribalistic, ritualistic reasons.
I just couldn't deal anymore with life's problems. I couldn't deal with the pressure that had been placed on me at work, the pressure of worrying how I'm going to feed my children. I couldn't deal with constantly being harassed. When I got to that point that I was that low because of the depression, and I just couldn't think of any way out, I just thought my family would be better off without me.
I think there is the stigma, particularly around men speaking about their emotions and saying what they're going through. And suicide is the highest cause of death for young men of a certain age group, which is shocking when you think of how common road accidents are.
So at this point, I couldn't deal with it anymore. So it ended up to me waking up one morning and actually decided I had enough, and I ended up trying to take my own life. I waited till I thought everybody was out the house, and I attempted to hang myself. Unbeknownst to me, my 11-year-old daughter had come back in and found me. To me, that is the hardest thing I have to deal with all this. The fact that my daughter had to witness that and see her dad in that state. It's caused me great pain, and it's also caused her a great disturbance in our relationship, and it really, really is the worst thing that possibly could have happened.
I think with things like depression, people do recover, certainly for substantial periods of time. I'm not sure they're ever quite the same again. Learning to manage the condition, they can learn to nip it in the bud.
And with all of the common mental health problems, the sooner that it's noticed and intervention happens, the better all round. It can just save it. Well, it will stop it going into a more serious state.
At that point, I then spent the next 6 to 8 weeks as an inpatient in a mental hospital. I just started asking questions. How did I get like this? How did this happen to me? What did I do? What was my part in this? Why was I wrong? Why am I being bullied? Why can't I cope?
Most people who are bullied, their quality of life suffers appreciably, but will still be reluctant, in my experience, to finger that as a causative factor. They'll often present with other stress-related issues, and you often have to probe quite deeply to get to what's often the underlying cause of bullying. Neil obviously lost his job, and ultimately his marriage and his family were destroyed by his experiences.
It was very difficult. It was very difficult for them. It was very difficult for me. I can't stress enough how much stress can cause damage to people's lives.
We can be really afraid of talking about mental health, but it's not something to be afraid of, and people are often really glad to have been asked how they are. Genuine question of how somebody is can be all that they need to open up and talk about it. The step is giving reassurance, is reassuring that person that this is real, it's an illness, it isn't that personal weakness, it isn't a flaw.
things can and will get better with the appropriate help, and they're not always going to feel like that. You know, just giving them that hope.
From a management point of view, it never should get to that. It absolutely shouldn't get to that. And I've seen bullying, I've seen harassment, I've seen unrealistic targets, I've seen blokes expected to work 14 hours a day, and if they go home early, they get paraded around to the other lads to say, listen, this guy's not pulling his weight, he's not doing the overtime, he's going home, this is why you have to stay longer. It's absolutely appalling, and it has to stop, because it's costing people dearly. It's costing their companies dearly, it's costing their employees personally, and eventually it's going to cost them financially, because they will be sued.
More than ever, it's really important that we look after the mental health of our employees. It makes good business sense, and means that everybody's happier as well.
I think every company needs to have a mental health first aider. I think that every person needs to know there's someone there to get help and advice if they have concerns about anybody at all. It's just having somewhere to go to get the advice they need.
I think absolutely believe that it's the role of managers to be proactive in most areas, but particularly in this area.
Presenteeism, i.e. you are in the workplace but not performing to full capability because of a mental health problem, is rife, and later leads to absenteeism, which is also expensive to industries. So by intervening early, signposting and helping someone for a 4, 8, 12-week period, ultimately you are saving people 6 months, years and beyond of absenteeism.
I think when you take it back to that, where 1 in 6 people of working age will show the signs of symptoms of mental health problems in any one year, if you compare that, if 1 in 6 of your employees had an accident at work, broke their ankle, it would be massive. There'd be an outcry about it and something would be done. But because it's mental health, no one likes talking about mental health, no one even likes to acknowledge mental health, nothing's being done about it, and something does need to be done.